Hi everybody, this is Joshua Kirk back with you guys once again on YouTube, and now it's time for episode 31 of Album of the Day, in which I'm going to do another throwback review. I said before in some of the reviews that I did early in February, like Wreck Your Life by the Old 97s, that I would do a lot of throwback reviews and maybe occasionally review a new album if it's out from either 2013 or 2014 this year. But now we're going to do a throwback review, and we're going to take you all the way back to 1995 with this review, with an album by an artist that really defined the modern punk rock scene, called Foo Fighters. And this is a Foo Fighters record, but on this album, everything on here was performed by the leader of Foo Fighters himself, Dave Grohl, who's also been the drummer for Nirvana and is currently now the drummer for the band Them Crooked Vultures. It's really more of a Dave Grohl solo project on this album, Foo Fighters. But Foo Fighters happened to be a band when this album was out, so it made sense. They just call it Foo Fighters and say it's a Foo Fighters record, but it's not the full band, it's just Dave Grohl. But anyway, I'm here to review their self-titled debut album released on July 4th, 1995. Let me say, this is a really cool album cover. It has a pistol on it. So anyway, here's the album cover, the album spine, the other album spine, and the back. Here are the tracks on here. This Is a Call, I'll Stick Around, Big Me, Alone and Easy Target, Good Grief, Floaty, Weenie Beanie, For All, Oh George, For All the Cows, Ecstatic, Watershed, and Exhausted. And this is released on Roswell Records and RCA Records too. And this was produced by Foo Fighters, which basically was Dave Grohl at the time, and Barrett Jones. And it was mixed by Tom Rothrock and Rob Schnapf, who have also worked with Beck on his debut major label album, Mellow Gold. So I assume you're probably familiar with both those people because of their work with Beck on his major label debut album, Mellow Gold, as well as here for this Foo Fighters debut album, which is basically Dave Grohl performing everything himself. If you're a Foo Fighters fan, if you really like punchy punk rock tunes, chances are you probably are familiar with this record. Like if you've been a Foo Fighters fan for a long time, chances are you were probably listening to this nonstop as a child, probably. But I'm a pretty young person, but trust me, this is music that's pretty much some good little punk rock nostalgia right here. So yeah, anyway, I'm gonna open this up, and you can tell I didn't buy this back in 1995 because I wasn't even born then. I wasn't born till 2001, but there's and you can tell I bought this at a later time. It was 2010 or something, because it has ads for the Foo Fighters debut album, The Color and the Shape, which I did a review of early on this channel, There's Nothing Left to Lose, and One by One, because at the time, One by One was the latest Foo Fighters album. It was out in 2002, which, the Foo Fighters pretty much considered probably their least favorite recording. And then on the back there's a picture of the bands right there, the current lineup: Dave Grohl, Chris Shiflett, Nate Mandola and Taylor Hawkins, and then later Pat Smear would rejoin the band after being a touring member and an older member back in 1995 to 1997. But now he's rejoined the band, so it's 3 guitar parts, a bass player, and a drummer. So it's even punchier then. And it has an ad for the live DVD they did during the One by One tour. Which would eventually become Everywhere But Home, I think, is what it's called. Yeah, it's a pretty cool DVD. I've watched it before. Yeah, it's Everywhere But Home's a pretty cool DVD. But anyway, here's a little insert. No lyrics, unfortunately, which, you know, is unfortunate, but there's like some nice artwork on here, nice little painting and chalk on here. And then pictures of the bands. Like, show you pictures of the bands. And then of course there's like the liner notes there, and a picture of the older Foo Fighters lineup, which is Pat Smear, Nate Mendel, William Goldsmith, and Dave Grohl. William Goldsmith left the band pretty soon because Dave Grohl decided he was not a good enough drummer for the band. So I'm going to put a couple of inserts back. And then there's like the CD itself, which is like part of the American globe. It looks like, you know, just painted with like purple and white here. So yeah, that's the album packaging. Now for the Foo Fighters self-titled debut album, there is not a lot to talk about with this album. In fact, I think this is going to be a relatively short review because everybody knows this, everybody loves it, so there's no need to introduce much people to it. Like, if you've never heard of Foo Fighters before, well then, you know, check out this review and see if you become a fan after listening to them. But I'm sure plenty of you are just like 90% familiar with Foo Fighters, because they are like a band that, you know, to me, a CD, a punk rock CD collection would not be complete without Foo Fighters albums. In fact, I have pretty much every one of their albums. Of course, it's got all the classics, like This Is a Call and I'll Stick Around, and yeah. Like, it's got all the classics, like This Is a Call and I'll Stick Around, and yeah, it's got like a bunch of classics like that. And then there's like a few interesting tracks on here. There's a song on here called Big Me that's like talking about how, you know, when you talk about something, you carry on, something carries on, and then, you know, everything kind of tends to become new to you, pretty much. Like, pretty much, you become a big person to, like, you know, renew everything and stuff like that. Yeah. And the song Floaty starts out pretty interesting. It starts out with kind of this acoustic intro, but then eventually changes to this punk rock kind of song. And Dave Grohl has a weird psychedelic thing going on with his voice on here. Like, it's all psychedelic, and it's like got the little like that little psychedelic effect going on it. And the song Weenie Beanie is a weirder track. Like, it's a song where not a lot of people can really understand what Dave Grohl is saying, neither can I. But, you know, he's like, sounds like he's singing in like into like a megaphone or something, and the drums are like really loud. And the guitar parts on that song are pretty heavy too. Like, I'll show you my acoustic guitar on like how heavy the chords of that song seem. It's like, it's that loud pretty much, yeah. Like, I'm not the best guitar player, but I just had to show those chords on my old acoustic guitar that I've had since 2008. I've had it for about 7 years now. But yeah, it's like really heavy, kind of like that. And, you know, there are like plenty of other songs that just make this album just a success the whole time. Like, for example, Alone and Easy Target and Good Grief are just some really cool, like, just punchy rock and roll songs that, you know, are just awesome. That just, you know, like, this is an album that doesn't really need much introduction to it, because it's an album I'm pretty sure all of you have heard of pretty much, especially if you've known the Foo Fighters for a long time. They're like, And then the song For All the Cows is kind of a song about how, sometimes you kind of feel like a cow and you tend to, like, you're not ready to, like, you're not really ready to be, like, with, people that just kind of act like cows a little bit. And then there's the song Watershed, and let me tell you this, that song is just so cool, so kick butt in my opinion. I mean, that song's all, I'll show you the chords for that song with like how those go. Like it's all like the chords on Watershed are just incredibly addictive to listen to. Like, yeah, I love that song. One of my favorite Foo Fighters tracks. And the closing track, Exhausted, is really a nice track too, although Dave Grohl's vocals are kind of soft and whispery on here. Not like this, but rather just like this. Like, like he's kind of, it kind of makes sense that this song is called Exhausted because it does have, like, Dave Grohl sounds pretty exhausted vocally on this song. Like, the vocals are kind of being mumbled a little bit, and the guitars and the guitars, the bass, and the drums kind of have, like, nervous energy to them and stuff. Yeah, like, I really like albums that kind of have like nervous energy to them, and I think this debut album by Foo Fighters is just that. It's really punchy, and these are songs that are pretty simple, but kind of hard. Like, these songs are pretty simple. I bet you, if you play guitar, if you've been playing electric guitar for years, you probably can pretty much play every song on this album. Although some of them are pretty complicated. I mean, the chords to Weenie Beanie I bet are like just really, really hard. Like, your fingers may hurt the first time you try to play that song. And pretty much the same thing with Watershed. The chords may be pretty complicated for that song too. And maybe with I'll Stick Around, the classic too. So yeah, this is an album that overall, like, it's an excellent album. You may not exactly understand, you may not exactly understand what Dave Grohl's lyrics on this album are about. Like, I bet you some of you pretty much vaguely know what Dave Grohl is saying on Weenie Beanie, because it's so weird but cool at the same time. But I do know some of the lyrics for it. At the beginning, he's saying, "I'm molasses, hung in rent, and read a sponsor, one shot, no post show, tear it off but not a lot." So I do know that those are some of the lyrics for the song. Yeah. So yeah, those are some of the words he's saying, although it sounds like he's saying, like, much stronger things than that. So yeah, probably my favorite tracks on here, This Is a Call and I'll Stick Around. Classics, can't go wrong with them. I can't imagine a Foo Fighters fan that doesn't like those songs by them. I also really like Big Me, Alone, and Easy Target, Good Grief, and Weenie Beanie, For All the Cows, Ecstatic, and Watershed. Those are all just, some great songs. There's not really a single bad moment on this album, so I'm probably going to give it a 9 or a 10. I mean, it's up there in just some of the greatest rock and roll albums ever made. I do like the color and the shape a little more than this album, but it's still a great debut album. Like, debut albums are usually the kind of albums that are kind of rough to make, especially if you don't know what kind of band you want to be. In fact, when Dave Grohl did this album, he didn't know what he was doing. He didn't even know that it was Foo Fighters yet. But eventually, when he got 3 other guys in his band, and then eventually became a full band, he pretty much knew what music. He pretty much didn't know what kind of music he was playing until Foo Fighters was eventually a band. And Foo Fighters just became a groundbreaking success. They played every big festival you can imagine. Plus they were on David Letterman, and, since then they've been, kind of the kings of, just really amazing 1-2 punchy rock and roll. So yeah. If you've never heard of Foo Fighters before, well then, I want you to go look them up. I just want you to go look them up if you've never heard of them, because they are just a great rock and roll band. And I definitely recommend this album as well as The Color and the Shape too. And I definitely recommend their latest album, Wasting Light, which I did do a review of, but it was on my website, JK Music Reviews, and not on YouTube. So go to my website, JK Music Reviews, and you'll see that podcast review that I did for Wasting Light. So this is kind of a band, they're a great rock and roll band. I know some people may not like them, but I love their music, and they're just, the best rock and roll band I can think of in the 21st century. So yeah, that was my review of the Foo Fighters' self-titled debut album, and I'd love to hear what you guys think of it in the comments. Do you love this album because of how punchy it is? If you do, I'd love to hear your comments about it. So yeah, there it is. I forgot to mention the t-shirt that I'm wearing in this video. I'm wearing the new Black Keys Turn Blue t-shirt, which came with the new Black Keys album Turn Blue. It was like a t-shirt edition at Best Buy. I already have the CD Turn Blue, but I bought the t-shirt edition and was able to, get this Turn Blue t-shirt. And hopefully I should do a review of that album and maybe an older Black Keys album, like The Big Come Up, because The Big Come Up is my favorite Black Keys album. Awesome album. Just straight up garage rock, and it is just awesome. Maybe a little too short, but The Big Come Up's a great album, and I think I want to do a review of that. And their new album, Turn Blue, I was kind of underwhelmed by it at first, but it's starting to grow on me, and as of right now, reviewing it is becoming a possibility for me. So yeah, and there are plenty of other artists that I want to review on this channel, and those include people like Arcade Fire, Beck, The National, you name it. Lots of bands like that I want to review eventually on this channel. But, anyway, this is Joshua Kirk, my review of... before I sign off, I just want to let you guys know that I will be at camp this coming week. I'm going to be leaving for camp on Sunday, but I'll be back on Saturday, and I may not do a review on next Saturday, so don't expect me to do a review on Saturday morning, because I may save it for Sunday morning next weekend when I'm home from camp, because Saturday is going to be a busy day. But anyway, I'm going to have a great time at camp, and I'll see you guys next weekend for the next review. So this is Joshua Kirk, my review of the Foo Fighters' self-titled debut album released on July 4th, 1995. This is Joshua Kirk, signing off.